is here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, when you look at the horizon and what's going on in this country and overseas each day, you see a number of forces at work, don't you? You see the kamikaze party, the Democrat Party, which is out to destroy everything and anything in its path. And, of course, it works very, very closely with the Praetorian Guard media. The Praetorian Guard media are out in the open now, particularly CNN. Jake Tapper on Sunday should have been ashamed of himself, the way he was throwing softballs at Chuck Schumer, basically giving Chuck Schumer his one-liners. So Tapper has destroyed his credibility. This guy Stetler, sort of a fat little Pillsbury doughboy, he never had any credibility. The Morning Show and Mrs. Schmo, they're a bad lounge act. They're a bad Las Vegas lounge act. They just are. And the hits go on and on and on. They drag out these kook, long in the tooth, Ivy League professors to tell us that Trump has committed an impeachable offense, a high crime and misdemeanor, when they can't even tell us what crime he's committed. They can't even tell us what statute they're talking about. Remember, I talked about this last week and the week before. They can't even name the Russian he did it with, or the Russian group he did it with. It's just pathetic. Then we have Chuck Schumer, who basically, if he wasn't a politician, would probably be wearing a raincoat, standing on the corner saying, "Hey, little girl." But anyway, there he is, with his cornrows and his greaseback Nixon-like hair, as he hunches over more and more each and every passing day. Looks like the Grim Reaper. And that's the best I can say about him. He wants the Attorney General to resign. He wants the Deputy Attorney General to resign if a special prosecutor is not picked. He wants not only a special prosecutor, he wants an independent commission. The man's out of his mind. He's always been out of his mind. And, of course, because he's out of his mind, the Democrats choose him as their leader in the United States Senate. These Sunday shows, ladies and gentlemen, have become unwatchable. A conga line of miscreants and malcontents of the left, where the media pick the biggest kooks they possibly can on the left and in the Democrat Party to pretend they're doing news interviews. They're not news interviews. They're DNC commercials. Meanwhile, where are the Republicans? Mitch McConnell. Does anybody know where Mitch McConnell is? Lamar Alexander? John Cornyn. This is your Republican leadership. John Thune. America doesn't even know who most of these people are, and for good reason. For good reason. Because they do not engage. They're not only not charismatic, they're the opposite. Pathetic. With an inability to articulate principles. And so now the country continues to be pushed into this whirlwind, pushed and pulled, screaming, into this whirlwind of a phony scandal where there's no criminal statute at stake and no evidence of anything of any kind. Because the Democrats control the media narrative, and the media narrative is whatever the Democrats say. Doesn't that pretty much sum it up? Yeah, I think it does. We'll revisit this in a moment. By the way, CNN, 175 people suing CNN for racial discrimination. And I'm waiting for people to contact their advertisers to ask them if they should be boycotted. Because who the hell wants to run ads on a cable channel that's accused by scores of minorities of racial discrimination? I assume the people at Fox News will start to call the advertisers for CNN and find out. Don't you think, folks? More on that later if I get around to it. Looks like Syria has a Third Reich-style crematorium for the thousands of prisoners they're executing. About 50 a day. I'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to focus on something else. I've been watching the last several days, if not the last few weeks, as I'm sure many of you have, the President, Donald Trump, who campaigned vigorously and unequivocally on moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He did it repeatedly. And but I've been watching with great frustration and concern how he appears to be in the midst of betraying that promise. And I hope this isn't becoming a habit or a pattern. We will play the Secretary of State soon on his interview Sunday, which was an abomination. I told you about McMaster, who's really awful. He is the assistant to the President for National Security. He's wiping out one conservative after another over there and trying to wipe out others. He is what we would call a military bureaucrat at this point. How he was using the language of the PLO and Hamas, calling Judea and Samaria, these are ancient Jewish lands, ancient Jewish lands, Judea and Samaria. It's not a West Bank, the West Bank of Jordan. Jordan gives it the name West Bank, and now we're all supposed to say West Bank. Might as well call it Israel's East Bank. But it's not Israeli-occupied territory. It's Palestinian-occupied territory, to be historically accurate. And yet so quickly and easily has the President of the United States fallen into the lap of the leftists, of the bureaucrats, of the State Department, of the swamp, when he unequivocally stated that we're going to move the embassy. So why doesn't he move it? What's stopping him? Ladies and gentlemen, this is hugely important from a symbolic point of view, and it has real world effect too. But now they're linking it to a peace negotiation. What is the president's obsession now with a peace negotiation? Where did this come from? In many respects, a two-state solution for Israel is a final solution for Israel. That country, they can't make a mistake, you know. One part of the country is 7, 8, 9 miles wide. One of these Russian MiGs, I mean, before you blink, it's covered the entire width of that particular area of Israel. When you look at the Golan Heights, the enemy's all around. Now, as I told you, I'm going over there next week for the 50th anniversary of the reunification with Jerusalem. Do you know the Palestinians claim the entirety of Jerusalem, including Jewish sites that are over 5,000 years old? So why is the President of the United States playing footsie with Abbas, who is a known terrorist? Let me repeat that. Abbas dresses nicely. He comes to the United States. He makes what people consider reasonable demands. And then when he goes back, they continue to fund terrorism. They continue to encourage their children in elementary school and even preschool to become suicide bombers. I'm not even talking about Hamas. I'm talking about Fatah. Oh, the moderates. Well, is that moderate in your neighborhood? Ain't it a moderate in my neighborhood? I don't know what the president's doing. There's mixed reports today. He's going to go to the Wailing Wall, which is arguably the most important Jewish site. There's a report in Israel, two reports really, one in the Jerusalem Post and one by their local TV station, that one of the president's senior people over there, when asked if the Prime Minister of Israel can accompany our president, because our president now reportedly is going to go to the wall, he raised his voice, and he said, this is not in Israeli territory. Excuse me. The Western Wall is not in Israeli territory? Well, where is it? Where is it? This is amazing. Now, Abbas, just so you know, got his doctorate in Holocaust denial. PhD dissertation was in denying the Holocaust. This is a gruesome, loathsome, genocidal maniac who is treated as if he's some kind of a statesman. But McMaster, the assistant to the president for national security, was using the language of this man. So he's calling Judea and Samaria the West Bank. Excuse me, he's not even doing that. He's calling it Palestine. Palestine. The Palestinians call it Palestine. It's like climate change. We've gone from global cooling to global warming to climate change. Well, now we've gone from what is correct, Judea and Samaria, to the West Bank, and now to Palestine. When did that happen? We had an armistice agreement. That's the only reason those boundaries exist. They were never intended to be permanent. Now we treat it as if they're permanent. Now, I don't know what the president's thinking. Maybe it's because he's not informed about this. He's not knowledgeable about it. So he's susceptible to being pressured or influenced or whatever. Because he's surrounded by guys like Tillerson and McMaster and the usual types who are pushing this agenda. Why did the president say that he would move our embassy to Jerusalem when he didn't mean it? Why would he do that? Why is it so difficult? Why is it so complicated? And why now? Well, I want you to listen to this. Actually, I got to take a break. Stay where you are. Bated breath and awe. And by the way, we're going to cover many, many things, but I want you to listen to this because you're not going to hear this anywhere else. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People don't want to be viewed as critical of the president. I'm not critical of the president all the time. I want him to succeed. But I'll be critical of him when I think I need to be critical of him. I was that way with Ronald Reagan, and I worked for Ronald Reagan, although I didn't have to be that critical, quite frankly. But this is a big deal, isn't it? It's a big deal. Why is he treating the president of China, Xi, one way and Netanyahu another, in my humble opinion? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I say these reports that President Trump revealed classified information to the Russians, and I thought, they must be confusing him with Hillary Clinton. But we'll dig into that a little bit later, too. You know, the allegations are just so, as may I say, fast and furious, it's hard to keep up with them. And so, of course, the media narrative is pushed and pushed and pushed every day. But we're going to slow down, and I want to go over a few of these things. I want you to listen to this Secretary Tillerson on Sunday on the Meet the Depressed. Which cut is it? Cut 10. Go.
The issue of moving the embassy, the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, it has been reported that it is not going to happen, and then that's been retracted. Let me ask you this. When is the final decision, or is this going to be one of those things that we're always going to contemplate moving it, but it's a moving target for a while?
Well, the president, I think rightly, has taken a very deliberative approach to understanding the issue itself, listening to input from all interested parties in the region, and understanding.
All right, so see how it's changed? We're going to move it. Now we want to listen to all interested parties in the region. Well, let's see. You got the Israelis, and then you have the Arabs. The Israelis, that's one party, and then you got 25 Arab states. The hell is this? Is this a joke? What is this? Go ahead.
Move in the context of a peace initiative what impact would such a move have?
All right, stop right there. So now the move has to be examined in the context of a peace initiative. A peace initiative? Does anybody remember that during the campaign? So now the move, if you listen to the Secretary of State, is connected to a peace initiative. As my buddy Ben Shapiro put it at the Daily Wire, oh, so now it's blackmail. Either the Israelis participate in a peace initiative, the art of the deal, and it comes up with a peace initiative, or it's not on the table any longer. Isn't that what Mr. Tillerson is insinuating here? So now all of a sudden Mr. Netanyahu has his back against the wall. Now they're on the defensive again. No rest for the weary, as they say. This is turning into Obama 2.0. I'm just telling you right now. Propaganda aside during the campaign, this is turning into a mess. All right? So far you have Tillerson in his own obnoxious way saying this is being studied. We're listening to the interested parties in the region. What, like the Saudis? And what's the impact on a peace initiative? Go ahead.
Has recently expressed his view that he wants to put a lot of effort into seeing if we cannot advance a peace initiative between Israel and Palestine. Mm-hmm. And so I think in large...
Stop! Between Israel and Palestine. Mr. Tillerson, like Mr. McMaster, has just given the Palestinians effectively a country. Judea and Samaria. You heard that, Mr. Producer? Between the Israelis and Palestine. I am stunned. I am shocked at how quickly the President of the United States reversed course and appears to have sold out. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Nothing effectively has been done yet, but this is really quite shocking to me. All right, folks, I shall return.
In a world of pathetic liberal potholes, he's a truck full of hot constitutional asphalt. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
See, ladies and gentlemen, Judea and Samaria. I'd say for about 2,000 years or so, since the destruction of Jewish sovereignty and the expulsion of most of the Jews from those lands, was occupied and colonized. The Ottomans. They divided up the territory. Corporate in areas that incorporate today Israel, Syria, Jordan, stretching into Iraq. And before that, land had largely been owned or passed on by word of mouth. The Palestinians never had a legitimate claim to Judea or Samaria, which was then renamed the West Bank, and which now this administration has renamed Palestine. Palestine. And the idea that the Israelis can't insist that countries that have ambassador facilities in their country put them in their capital of Jerusalem is really quite appalling. You're allowing the terrorists, that is, the old PLO, then Fatah, Hezbollah, which is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, and rather Hamas, which is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, and really controlled by Hezbollah, which is controlled by Iran, to allow them to have a veto because the Gulf Arab states are scared to death is outrageous. Particularly when the President of the United States put his reputation on the line, his character on the line, and said otherwise. I mean, within hundreds of miles of Jerusalem, the Syrians have now built a crematorium. A crematorium. They're killing upwards of 50 prisoners a day in mass hangings or executions of other sorts and torture, and getting rid of the evidence. Thousands and thousands of bodies. The Israelis can't give up this territory. I don't care if you call it a two-state solution or what the hell you call it. With jets that break the sound barrier, they're streaking across that tiny country, which is the size of New Jersey, and part of it's about 7 to 9 miles wide, in seconds. You don't have an opportunity to defend your cities. And they're surrounded by these enemies. So why are we obsessed with a new Trump administration? Not with jobs, not with building a wall on the border. Quite frankly, the measly amount of money they want to put into the military is upsetting to me. You take a guy who's been in the bowels of the Veterans Administration, you make him the administrator and so forth. Why are they focused on this? It doesn't even make any sense to me. How is it that Vladimir Putin and the Russians have recognized part of Jerusalem, I mean it's better than none, as the capital of Israel? How is that possible and the United States is not? When Trump said he would. What's the holdup? We're going to check with the neighborhood? Are you kidding me? Check with the neighborhood. Let me ask you something. Do we check with Israel when we check with the rest of the neighborhood? Do we check with Israel in our dealings with Iran? Do we check with Israel in our dealings with Egypt? You get the point. This is absurd. Again, Rex Tillerson at the top. He sounds like he's Secretary of State for Barack Obama. He sounds exactly like John Kerry, with a different affectation. Cut 10, go.
The issue of moving the embassy, the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, it has been reported that it is not going to happen, and then that's been retracted. Let me ask you this. When is the final decision, or is this going to be one of those things that we're always going to contemplate moving it, but it's a moving target for a while?
Well, the President, I think rightly, has taken a very deliberative approach to understanding the issue itself, listening to input from all interested parties in the region, and understanding would such a move in the context of a peace initiative, what impact would such a move have?
Now let's stop. See, if he kept his word and was acting as a principled president, he would have just moved it. And then he could say, okay, now we'll talk peace, if you want to. Instead, they did the reverse. I think intentionally. Now there's a bunch of caveats, and in some cases impossible caveats. Look, I'm hoping next week he surprises everybody and just does it. But if he does, it'll be contradicting his own national security advisor. If he does, it'll be contradicting what you just heard from yesterday's Meet the Depressed, Tillerson saying his own Secretary of State. He'll be contradicting both of them flat out. So it concerns me that they're stating American policy. Go ahead.
The President has recently expressed his view that he wants to put a lot of effort into seeing if we cannot advance a peace initiative between Israel and Palestine. Mm-hmm. And so I think...
There you go. Israel and Palestine. Israel and Palestine. So over 5,000 years of history means nothing. Nothing. The indigenous peoples in this area, were the Jews. By the way, as a footnote, does anybody know how many Christians are left in Bethlehem? Not many. This is my point. Bethlehem, the birthplace of Christianity. Jerusalem, if you will, the birthplace of Judaism. All of a sudden, Christianity, Judaism, they all belong to the Palestinians. When the hell did that happen? Even more than that, the entire Middle East belongs to the Muslims. Jews can't be there. Christians can't be there. Unbelievable. two-state solution. How can there be a two-state solution when one group of people keep talking about wiping out the other group of people? Won't even recognize their existence. How is that possible? I mean, my God. Donald Trump talks about our southern border being breached, right? We're going to build a wall to do what? To stop people from coming into this country illegally. Meanwhile, he's taken up the Obama position when it comes to Israel and the Palestinians, which is a two-state solution. A two-state solution. Israel that wants to live in peace and be left the hell alone, and the other people who want to destroy them. Tell me, would we have a two-state solution if that involved the United States and Mexico in that respect? Nobody would. Why am I having to make these points? Why am I having to argue this? Did I not hear the president correctly when he was campaigning? Go ahead.
The president is being very careful to understand how such a decision would impact a peace process.
So this could be a while. That if the peace process is active, he'll hold off on moving the embassy. That seems to be how I interpreted your answer. Is that a fair interpretation?
Well, I think it'll be informed, again, by the parties that are involved in those talks, and most certainly Israel's view on whether Israel views it as being helpful to a peace initiative or perhaps a distraction.
Now, stop. This has got to be the most cynical line. Even John Kerry didn't come up with that screwball point. So Israel has to decide whether this is a distraction, whether it's helpful to the peace initiative. That's not the test, ladies and gentlemen. That's the capital of that country. Whether it's helpful to a peace initiative, perhaps a distraction, that wasn't the test. The president never said that. Well, here you go. You know what else Tillerson did? You know what else? He's been very busy, Tillerson. On Thursday, he signed an international declaration recognizing, quote, the issue of climate change, unquote, as a problem that the United States government needs to address, called the Fairbanks Declaration. At a meeting in the Arctic Council, a forum made up of indigenous groups and 8 countries with territory bordering the Arctic Circle. Indigenous groups? I didn't think we had indigenous groups. Obviously, the Jews don't count when it comes to Judea and Samaria, but apparently in Alaska we do, indigenous groups. Walking a fine line, as they write at the Daily Wire, between legitimizing the scientific theory of anthropogenic climate change and considering the position of climate change skeptics, a diplomatic Tillerson chose his words carefully during the meeting. He signed the damn thing, didn't he? He can choose all the words he wants. He signed it. He signed the declaration. And what does that mean? He recognized climate change appears to be at odds at climate change. Now, I thought that was at odds with what the president campaigned on. Thought he said it was a hoax, dreamed up by the Chinese to kill our economy. I know he said that in so many words. So why did he sign that? I'll tell you why he signed it. We have another issue. Ivanka Trump is a lovely lady. She's a lovely lady. I met her once. I don't know her. I met her husband once. He's a lovely gentleman. Okay, they're both very, very nice people. I have nothing personal against either of them. Period. I don't personal against any of them. Ivanka Trump is a liberal Democrat. Now, that shouldn't be a state secret. And Ivanka Trump hasn't changed her ideology. And how could she? She's in a White House where on the policy side there's not a single stinking constitutional conservative. And she's pushing this Paris Accord stuff, and Trump's now trying to figure out whether to back out of it after saying he would. So they're looking at some face-saving measure, that sort of a halfway thing where he can claim he did but really doesn't. This is important stuff, ladies and gentlemen, and this is why the Democrats are hammering Trump. Mark, what do you mean by that? Because when they hammer Republicans, the Republicans move left. They move left. They never move right. Because the Republicans seem to think, and their advisors seem to think, they'll buy peace with the Democrats in Congress, they'll buy peace with the Democrats in the media, and they buy peace with nobody. Instead, what happens? They're still attacked. The Democrats still try to chase them from office and destroy their presidencies. And the Republicans enact big chunks of the Democrat agenda. So Donald Trump, again, who campaigned unequivocally on getting out of that Paris crap. After all, it should have been a treaty, just like the Iran deal should have been a treaty. Just on those grounds alone, he should withdraw from it and say, look, any future president who believes in this stuff has to submit it to the Senate under our Constitution. Take the high road. Explain it to the American people. But instead, Ivanka, over dinner or whatever, is whispering in his ear, you know, Dad, this, that, and the other. It has a big impact. So now the Secretary of State signed the Fairbanks Agreement, recognizing climate change. Been a terrible Sunday, hasn't it? Although it was a lovely Mother's Day. And then the President's Mother's Day message. Now, I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen. When I think of Mother's Day, I'm not thinking of paid family leave. Are you? But in his statement on Mother's Day, statement from President Donald J. Trump on Women's Health Week, Mother's Day, among other things, he said we need paid family leave for the women, especially. Men too, but the women. Paid family leave. Massive entitlement that Republicans have always fought and defeated. Now the President of the United States and the Republican Congress hasn't done a damn thing to cut the debt or cut a single damn program. Have a brand new one in mind. So this is a priority for the President. And apparently a two-state solution is a priority for the President. And apparently we're either taking halfway measures on climate change or we're going to be all in with phony spin that it's not what it seems to be. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let me just say this. We have diplomatic relations with the United States with 119 countries. I think it's actually 219 countries. The only one whose capital we do not recognize is Israel, and they're supposedly our closest ally. Can you explain that to me? So we recognize the capitals of all these other countries, including countries that seek to blow us off the face of the earth, countries that undermine us, countries that are of no consequence to us. We recognize their capitals. We have embassies in their capitals. Israel, which is said to be our closest ally, we don't recognize their capital, and we don't put our embassy in their capital. Because the terrorists blackmail us, Mr. Abbas and the rest. And you hear Mr. Tillerson, we've got to see how this affects negotiations, peace deals. So we're carefully looking at the interests in the area, getting input. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Why don't you find out how many of those countries even want Israel to exist, Mr. Tillerson? So stupid is that comment. We know it's breaking. We know it's breaking, and Mr. Producer, when H.R. McMaster, the advisor to the President of National Security, comes to the microphone next hour, we will run with it live, all right? We're just doing this over the air here. Do you know the difference between a human being and a dog? It's what distinguishes us from every other living thing. The visionary men who wrote our Constitution knew. Learn what our founders understood about human nature. How it caused them to fight for the right of people to govern themselves and to preserve that right for you and me. Hillsdale College has a brand new online course, Introduction to the Constitution, and it's unlike anything you've ever seen. Now, the lessons are all under 15 minutes long, and they display the wit, warmth, and engaging manner of Hillsdale's president, Dr. Larry Arnn, a dear friend of mine and a brilliant scholar. And Larry Arnn uses the skills and so forth that he uses to teach the nation's premier college students at Hillsdale. You'll learn that the laws of nature and of nature's God dictate how government must work. You absolutely must see this mind-blowing 2-minute trailer. And you can see it. It'll captivate you. Watch it at levinforhillsdale.com, Levin for Hillsdale.com. Just check it out. Hillsdale inspires and teaches Americans like you for free as part of their mission to pursue truth and defend liberty. Take just 2 minutes, and view the trailer. It's at levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. And I promise you'll want to know more after you watch those 2 minutes. They're absolutely bracing. They're compelling. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, the narrative in the pretend media, the Praetorian Guard media, is we're all sitting around waiting for the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster. A statement on a Washington Compost story, which apparently is a leak, that the president revealed classified information to the Russians. Now, first blush, I thought they must have confused him with Hillary Clinton, given the private server and the Espionage Act and all that. And, of course, Democrats don't care about that, typically, when it involves Democrats, as it usually does. Democrats didn't care when Joe McCarthy was pointing out that the Russians had secreted spies in our country, including, as it turns out, Alger Hiss. And they don't care much when their lion of the Senate, Ted Kennedy, was working with the KGB and the highest levels of the Russian government than the Soviets to try and defeat Ronald Reagan in his second term. No. They care now about, Russia. My God. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. All right, let's get into this news that's supposedly breaking tonight. So everybody is supposed to hit the brakes, turn up the volume, and hang on every syllable by our news media. This comes from the Washington Compost. Now, I'm not saying it's inaccurate, but I'm saying consider the source. The Washington Compost has been on a jihad against this president, as have most of the media outlets. Now, to sum it up this way, and I'm not telling you anything that's not public now, information was apparently gleaned from a foreign source conducting espionage in one of the ISIS-held cities that ISIS was planning on using laptop or similar devices to blow up aircraft. And you've been hearing, that the government is considering banning certain types of electronics and so forth from airplanes, period. So this is information that was not gleaned from our intelligence sources, but from other parties that had been involved in espionage activities in a particular city in Syria that ISIS controls. The Washington Post piece is very provocative in the way it sets up the president. And other media outlets like the New York Times immediately run to Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. They run to Bob Corker, from whom they can expect provocative quotes, and they've done that. 3 people in the meeting with the president and the Russians, including Tillerson and McMaster and Powell, said that no classified information, reportedly, have said that no classified information was revealed. Now, coming to the microphone is the National Security Advisor. We're going to take this live. McMaster, go ahead.
The President and the Foreign Minister reviewed a range of common threats to our two countries, including threats to civil aviation. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed, and the President did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known. Two other senior officials who were present, including the Secretary of State, remember the meeting the same way and have said so. Their on-the-record accounts should outweigh those of anonymous sources. And I was in the room. It didn't happen. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Now, the Washington... we can kill it now. Did you hear the gaggle? The Washington Post has reported other false stories. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, as you will recall. Oh, yes, it has. In recent days. And so have other media outlets. That Comey had requested additional resources to investigate Russia, and that might be one of the reasons he was fired. That the Deputy Attorney General threatened to resign, which he never did. You know, stories like that. And they went with their anonymous sources. They go with anonymous sources again. Well, here is the Assistant to the President for National Security who was in the meeting, and he said it didn't happen. That classified information was not revealed. But the Washington Post has an anonymous leak, at least one, maybe more. And I have my own suspicions about this, folks. I have my own suspicions about this, that this leak somehow may have come from one of the intelligence committees, the House or the Senate. Again, I'm surmising, but I'm saying I'm surmising. I'm not the Washington Post running with anonymous sources. Now, why do I say that? I say that because they may have been briefed, the Senate and House Intelligence Committees, on what was discussed with the Russians. Not that there was a breach of any kind, not that there was a violation of any kind or the revelation of classified information, but just briefed. And then one of these senators or congressmen, or their staffers, making the case that this was a breach of national security, a violation and revelation of classified information. If I had to surmise, if I were investigating this, that's where I would start. You know, Tillerson and Powell and McMaster didn't leak it. And in fact, they've all said that there was not a revelation of classified information. So the National Security Advisor completely denies it. And now we deal with an anonymous source or two. And so this story is going to go on for days. And remember, the whole point here is to take out Trump. The whole point is to destroy the man's character and his reputation. He must be an incompetent boob. He shoots from the hip. Maybe he's even working with the Russians, giving them information. And so, just so absurd. So absurd. So this is going to be the next drumbeat. Day in and day out and day in and day out. And how do you prove it otherwise? That is, how do you disprove it? It becomes an impossibility. It becomes an impossibility. So the National Security Advisor could not have been clear enough, could not have been more clear. He says it didn't happen. So maybe the Washington Post will come forward with its sources. And by the way, maybe Bob Corker, talking to the New York Times, will stop being such a media whore and running immediately to the media or responding to them. Mark Warner can't help it. He is a media whore. And an imbecile to boot. And he is a Democrat who barely won re-election. And so he's trying to really improve his political future using the ranking position on the Senate Intelligence Committee. So we have the Secretary of State, we have Ms. Powell, we have Mr. McMaster, all denying this, that classified information was released. It will not stop the media. It will not stop the 24/7 coverage. It will not stop it. And unfortunately for those of us who really wanted this president to succeed in some areas, if not many areas, it's going to become increasingly difficult. Not because of us, but because of the cowards on Capitol Hill who play along with these Democrats. I want you to think about something for a second. Did Barack Obama ever have a situation like this? Despite what happened at the IRS, despite Fast and Frisk, despite all these things, despite the Iran deal and what we've learned about that, despite his violations of the Constitution with his executive fiats, the media frenzy never existed. It never occurred. It just didn't happen. And when he said he didn't do something or said it through a surrogate, that was it. It was taken at face value. The clamoring of the gaggle that you heard right after McMaster said, that's it, and he left. You never heard that in an Obama press conference. As a matter of fact, I remember this kid, Neil McCabe, I think or Neil Monroe. I think he was reporting at the time for the Daily Caller. And the president, he's leaving, and he took some questions, and Neil Monroe says, Mr. President, what about blah, blah, blah? And the media turned on him. You remember that, folks? The media shouted down the reporter for the Daily Caller as Obama was leaving the building. You would never see that at a Trump press event. Never. So I don't know. We have people on the record who were in the meeting. Secretary of State, a national security advisor by the name of Powell, Dina Powell, the national security advisor, all of whom completely deny the report in the Washington Compost about the revelation of classified information. And I smell a skunk. I smell a Democrat skunk on Capitol Hill. I smell a Democrat skunk on the Senate Intelligence Committee or on the House Intelligence Committee, who were likely briefed on what was discussed. Not that it was a breach, on what was discussed. And then they determined it was a breach of classified information. Absolutely pathetic. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
So the Washington Post claims the president revealed classified information during his meeting with the Russians. The problem is that the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, and another senior National Security Advisor who were present at the meeting denied classified information was revealed. I'm wondering, I'm surmising, if the Post's source might be on Capitol Hill. Obviously, I don't know, but I'd like to know which, if any, members of the intelligence committees were briefed on the discussion with the Russians. Because it seems possible to me that they could be the anonymous source. Oh, yes, anonymous sources, because Capitol Hill leaks all the time. I don't believe this came from the NSC or the NSA or the CIA or anything of the sort. I suspect this came from Democrats on Capitol Hill. And the Washington Compost knows it. And the CNN knows it. I want you to listen to the NSC director and advisor to the President on National Security, McMaster, who just a few minutes ago made a very short and definitive statement. Go.
I just have a brief statement for the record. There's nothing that the President takes more seriously than the security of the American people. The story that came out tonight, as reported, is false. The President and the Foreign Minister reviewed a range of common threats to our two countries, including threats to civil aviation. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed. And the President did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known. Two other senior officials who were present, including the Secretary of State, remember the meeting the same way and have said so. Their on-the-record accounts should outweigh those of anonymous sources. And I was in the room. It didn't happen. Thanks, everybody.
I was in the room, he said, and it didn't happen. I was in the room, and it didn't happen. Ben Sass, who detests Donald Trump, he happens to be on TV, so we'll see what he has to say. Now, all that said, ladies and gentlemen, what is this a story? I mean, truthfully. So the Senate, here's how this works out. Well, we need to get to the bottom of this. You need to get to the bottom of what? We need to have hearings. And this thing's out of control with the Russians. And what Trump may have told the Russians, according to the Washington Post, needs to be part of the sort of thing that this independent special prosecutor looks into. This is just getting ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. It's getting bigger and bigger. This is a man who's out of control. This is a man who's on the edge of insanity. We can't do this. We need to look at the 25th Amendment, and Republicans need to join with us. We can't just do this on our own. No. Let's step back, folks. We, the American people, let's look at this. Honestly, Russian collusion. So far, not a scintilla of evidence that Trump colluded with any Russian for anything. What criminal statute are we talking about? There is no criminal statute. So there's no facts and there's no criminal statute. Let's just put that in the box. That's a gimme. And so there's no basis for a special prosecutor. Did the Russians get involved in our election? Yes, but there's no evidence of any collusion with Trump or the Trump campaign. Okay? They're reaching out on this Carter Page. I have no idea who Carter Page is or what he did or any of these other people. But so what? So what? I can assure you if they did something that would harm Trump, it would be all over the Washington Compost and the New York Slimes and all the rest of it. So that's that. Number two, the firing of Jim Comey. Well, it's perfectly constitutional under our notion of separation of powers, and Jim Comey ultimately works for the President of the United States. So that is perfectly legitimate. That's number two. Number three, was he fired as part of a cover-up? Now, I've been thinking about this. So if he's fired as part of a cover-up, the Attorney General would have to be in on it. The Deputy Attorney General would have to be in on it. And quite frankly, the acting FBI Director would have to be in on it. And he said, no, the investigation goes on. This doesn't affect it in any way. So there's no cover-up. The Democrats hated Jim Comey 1 second before Donald Trump fired him. Now they hold him up as, as the greatest FBI agent in American history. Of course, which he's not. He should have been fired a long time ago. Well, that wasn't good enough. We have calls for impeachment and criminal investigations and independent prosecutors and independent commissions, and day in and day out, it's just a drumbeat. It is just unrelenting. And now today, just moments ago, there's a story in the Washington Post that the President of the United States revealed highly sensitive, classified information to the Russians he was meeting with, the foreign minister and the ambassador. And may have revealed an actual source. It's not our source. Another government gave us the information. We got the information. I'm just telling you what's in the story. From a city out of Syria that was controlled by ISIS that relates to electronic devices like laptops and so forth, and iPads and even iPhones, and the possible use of explosives on those devices so we have to worry about our aviation security. And that Trump was bragging about this, you see. Washington Post reports it with anonymous sources. Mr. Tillerson, the Secretary of State, immediately puts out a statement and says, that's not what I heard. Dina Powell, one of the senior national security advisors, was in there. That's not what she heard. Mr. McMaster, who is in fact the national security advisor and the director of the National Security Council, he's in on the meeting too, and he says that did not happen, period. And now we have a demand to get to the bottom of it. To get to the bottom of what? Always getting to the bottom of things. The bottom of what? Meanwhile, the North Korean, the inbred who runs that country, Kim Jong Fat Boy, he's nuking up. The Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran, they're nuking up with their new ICBM technology. The border remains open, and the Democrats will not agree to fund a wall. Can't get tax cuts done. Can't get a repeal of Obamacare so we can have some free market aspects of a real health care system. The Democrats have now dragged this country into the toilet. That's what they've done. They've dragged this country into the toilet, and so have the reporters. I'll be right back.
Speaking to the 4 out of 5 Americans who are literate at 877-381-3811.
Tillerson says the Washington Post report is baloney. He said during President Trump's meeting with Foreign Minister Lavrov, a broad range of subjects were discussed, among which were common efforts and threats regarding counterterrorism. During that exchange, the nature of specific threats were discussed, but they did not discuss sources, methods, or military operations. Dina Powell, the deputy NSA director, attended. She said, that's right, the Post story is false. You heard McMaster, I've played it twice now. He said, not that long ago, a few minutes ago, about 30 minutes ago, that no, this is not correct. The Washington Post story is false. Meanwhile, the New York Slimes, Reuters, and BuzzFeed say they've confirmed the story. This is why I believe this was a leak from a Democrat on Capitol Hill. Because who really, the sources for BuzzFeed, the Washington Post, and Reuters, and the New York Times, it's not some CIA guy or NSA guy or something like that. Their go-to people are Democrats on Capitol Hill. So I'm curious to know, and I just post this on my social sites, I'd like to know if members of Congress were briefed, if members of the intelligence committees were briefed, and if so, which members were briefed, particularly which Democrats. Because I smell a rat fink. I really do. I have my strong disagreements with Tillerson. You heard him early in the show. I'm no fan of McMaster. You've heard me talk about that. Or Dina Powell. You heard me talk about that some time ago. So what? I don't believe they destroy their own careers by lying about it. I really don't. There's no hesitation on their part whatsoever. Moreover, if it had taken place, you know full well they would have had to report it, or they would have thought they would have had to report it, but they didn't do that either, at least as far as we know. And I keep hearing the media speculate, well, it had to be somebody in that room, because they don't get it. No, it doesn't have to be somebody in that room, nor does it have to be a professional in any of these intelligence agencies. It can be a Democrat hack in Congress if these committees were briefed about what was discussed, and I suspect they were. And then they twist it into a violation and a revelation of classified information. The Washington Post dresses it up as anonymous sources when they know they're Democrats. Look, the Post represents the Democrat Party, as do most of the rest of the media. And they're involved to take out Trump. Now, I know there's some pseudo-conservatives and Republicans who are cheering this. The Bill Kristols of the world. You've got media failures like this John Ziegler guy, who's a clown. You've got people like that. And so when I use rationality and logic to discuss this, oh, you're just defending the guy. No, I'm laying this out as somebody with experience in the Justice Department and having to deal with trying to figure out who's leaking what. And just look at the preponderance of the evidence here. You've got 3 people on the record, a Secretary of State, an NSA advisor, the top dog, the number 2 dog, all saying, no, that's not what happened. There was no classified information that was revealed. So why should we believe the Washington Post, which was wrong quite a bit last week, and their anonymous sources? Why should we believe that? And we know the Washington Post has an angle on this. It's not a newspaper. It's a propaganda sheet. It's what it is. Don't blame me. If you owe back taxes to the IRS, you're not going to like hearing about their 92% conviction rate. That means the IRS wins 92% of tax avoider cases they prosecute. That's a pretty darn good record. Maybe you skated by this long, but they're coming. You have to get out in front of this or your IRS problems before they show up at your home and work, before they take your paycheck and bank accounts, before they add to you their 92% conviction rate. Call Optima Tax Relief, folks. They're the best. They're the pros. They're the experts. And they have a record to prove it. They step between you and the IRS, and they start resolving the problems that keep you up at night. Just give them a buzz. Ask how they've resolved over $500 million of tax debt for their clients. Ask them about their A-plus rating with a Better Business Bureau. And ask about the Fresh Start program with a chance to settle your back taxes for pennies on the dollar. They're amazing. I know. I see the success stories. Call 800-499-6300. 800-499-6300. That's 800-499-6300. Mr. Producer, are you hearing static? Is that going over the airwaves, or is it just in my ears? All right, we'll deal with it during the break, okay? Otherwise, I'm going to go deaf. I do not have the call screen up. Not because of me, because it's screwed up. So, Mr. Producer, give me a caller. Go ahead. Jerry in the Village in Florida, and may I ask, sir, how are they listening to us?
We're listening to WSKY.
The great WSKY. Go right ahead.
Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the situation that stands currently between Israelis and the Arabs. And I don't see how there can ever be a two-state solution to this problem. Because when two parties come to the table to negotiate something, each one of them has to have something they're willing to give up. And the only thing that the Arabs have to give up is rhetoric. That's the only thing they have. Plus, their history speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, sir. I agree with you completely. Agree with you completely. All right, Mr. Producer, who's next? I need the call letters, too, brother. Come on, give them to me. Myron from Arlington, Virginia, the great WMAL. Go.
Hi, Mark. A big fan. Hey, I have
Thank
a
you.
story on the classification release from the president. With my 22 years in the military, if I remember my rules and regulations correctly, the president is the ultimate classification authority for DOD.
No, I know all that. This, to me, it's not a question of legality or prosecution or the Constitution. That I think is a given. What they're trying to do here is to smear him.
Yep, so it's not even a story, and he can release whichever classified information he wants.
I know, but that's not the point whether he can. What they're saying is he released crucially important information, and the source of the information, may be snuffed out. And what I'm trying to say is it seems to me this did not come out of the Oval Office. All the principals there say this is not what happened. They would know. Kind of reminds me of James Clapper all over TV the other day telling everybody what took place at the dinner between Comey and Trump when Clapper wasn't at the dinner. Kind of bizarre, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all fiction.
All right. Thanks for your call, sir. Okay, we're going to have to go with another caller. Can I have the name again, please? Larry in Indiana. How are you, sir?
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. Call from WGBF 1280 AM in Evansville, Indiana. Well, you talked about a lot, but I keyed on 7 words that Rex Tillerson said. And if the readers were listening, they should have heard it too. When he talked about the relocation of the embassy.
This is on the Israel issue, Jerusalem. Yeah.
Correct. The 7 words he used was, in part of the sense, was, what impacts would such a move had? Now, that, to me, is in the past tense. And so I think that the consideration before of an absolute moving it there is off the table. And, as you said, is going to be used as part of this negotiation, or, as you said, one individual said, blackmailing Israel into doing some things they don't want.
And let me tell you, it's not going to work with the Israelis because their national security, their borders, are more important than anything else. They shouldn't have to beg for the United States, its closest ally, to put its embassy in its capital. As I said before, the United States has diplomatic relations with 219 countries. And in each case, it recognizes their capital, and in each case where we have an embassy, it's in their capital. We say that Israel is our closest ally, or certainly one of them, and that's the one place where we don't recognize their capital and don't put our embassy.
Exactly, and the importance of Israel here. Well, we know that Israel has been, they're surrounded, and they are our only ally in the area, real ally in the area. And the way, I don't know how to put this other than to say that Israel is the only country there that stands in the way because of Russia's involvement with Iran, their desire to put weapons in the northeastern Sudan, and everything from controlling the complete eastern end and half of the Mediterranean as well, if Israel's out of the way.
All right, my friend, good call. All right, let's go to our next, let's see here. I want to go to, I'm having a hell of a computer problem here, folks. Who is the next one? Who is it? Robert, Sirius Satellite, Tyler, Texas. How are you?
I'm doing great. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you, sir.
Listen, here's my take on it. There will never be peace in the region. And for President Trump to think that he's going to go over there and come up with some miraculous negotiating process, he's a fool. It just won't happen. There are other things more pressing that I think that they need to be putting their emphasis on, and we need to put our capital over there, put our embassy over there in their capital, but that's as far as it needs to go. It's time and time again the Palestinians have shown they can't be trusted and they break the agreements. So let's not get involved. Let's do our business with Israel.
But why is he? What do you think? What is the motivation here, do you think?
I think he's a great negotiator, and he knows how to negotiate. And I think the temptation to jump out there and try to fix this problem is just too great.
Well, let me ask you this. There's word of at least one New York City billionaire who's fairly conservative, who is extraordinarily close to the president and his family, who is pushing this two-state solution. He's pushing it. And I just feel like if this was going to be the president's position, he should have been honest with his supporters during the course of the campaign, don't you think?
I agree totally.
And why do they keep calling it Palestine, like it's a country?
I don't know. You'd have to. What's the saying? That's above my pay grade. I don't know the answer to that. Mark.
Well, it's above mine too. I think it's above all of ours. But now you voted for Trump, I take it, right?
Oh yeah, I love him.
And we defend him when he's under vicious attack that is absolutely unjust. Correct?
I do.
But on the other hand, when we see stuff like this, or the climate change stuff, I mean, we have every right to call him out because he took a completely different position during the course of the campaign, did he not?
He did, and I agree. We call him out when he's not doing what he promised he was going to do. And, I love him for the things that he's come out and said he was going to do, and, I hope he continues doing what he said he was going to do. Build the wall.
All right, my friend. Great call. I really liked it. Take care. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Imagine waking up at 2 in the morning to the sound of shattering glass. You grab your gun, but not even seconds later you find yourself face to face with a home intruder who's violently searching for fast cash in a drug-fueled rage. These things happen, you know. He attacks, and you're forced to defend yourself. The police arrive, as they do. But wait, it all goes so fast. Suddenly, you're the one being handcuffed and thrown into the back of a squad car. That's the protocol, you know. Even though you did everything right, you're going to need a good lawyer and bail money, and you're going to need it fast. That's where the United States Concealed Carry Association comes in, to protect you before, during, and after a self-defense incident. They provide industry-leading education, training, self-defense insurance for responsible gun owners like you. And while they want to make sure you're protected legally and financially should you ever have to defend yourself, they also want you to arm yourself with the most effective tool they know for self-defense. And right now they're putting on one of the biggest gun giveaways ever. They want to give 10 people, 10 of you in my audience, $1,500 to buy the gun of your dreams. Just go to defendthem.com. Go right now, and you can enter for free. But you have to hurry. That's defendthem.com for your 10 chances to win the gun of your dreams. That's defendthem.com. Now, true to course, over at the New York Slimes, they went and interviewed Bob Corker on the revelation of classified information. Quote, the White House has got to do something soon to bring itself under control and in order, Senator Bob Corker, Republican of Tennessee and chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, told reporters, adding, it's got to happen. Now, this is the guy that helped Obama sell out to the Iranians. Obviously, they're in a downward spiral right now. They've got to figure out a way to come to grips with all that's happening. This is Corker. Asked about the larger effect of the disclosure, Corker said, to compromise a source is something that you just don't do. That's why we keep the information that we get from intelligence sources so close as to prevent that from happening. So Corker is in hook, line, and sinker, takes the bait. This is what Democrats never do. Never, ever do. Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia and vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said on Twitter, if true, this is a slap in the face to the intel community. Risking sources and methods is inexcusable, particularly with the Russians. Guy doesn't wait for 2 seconds to get any information. We don't even know who the leaker is. I would definitely want to question him. Not that I'm saying he's the leaker, of course. And this is how it works in Washington, D.C. And this is how they seek to destroy this administration. Just telling you the truth. By the way, did I mention? If I did, I want to mention again that CNN has been sued by 175 people for racial discrimination. Did I mention that? Oh, yeah. From the Daily Wire, Joseph Curl. It's a few days old, but who cares? There's been much ado, and rightly so, they write, over the goings-on at the Fox News Channel, so forth and so on. Less in the news is a lawsuit by 13 plaintiffs against Fox alleging racial discrimination. But even less in the news is a massive lawsuit against CNN. The class action suit has been growing by leaps and bounds ever since it was first filed in December. Now, listen to this. Some 175 current and former employees have contacted lawyers about joining the case. So will CNN have a 100 number, a 1-800 number, for anybody who was racially discriminated against to give them a call? Only a few publications followed up on the story at the end of April when the case exploded. The lawsuit against CNN, meanwhile, claims the company's Atlanta headquarters is rife with racism wrote the New York Post on April 27. I'm going to continue with this after the top of the hour because I think you really need to know what's going over at CNN. CNN. Is CNN the Klansman station, ladies and gentlemen? Is it the white supremacy station? I'm just curious. Isn't that what liberals would say? I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Let me finish this story on CNN. Story on CNN. This is from Joseph Curl, The Daily Wire. Here's something you don't hear much about, the 175 people suing CNN for racial discrimination. More into the body of the piece. These are former and current employees. Former and current employees. And it's been all but covered up by the media. The lawsuit against CNN, meanwhile, claims the company's Atlanta headquarters is rife with racism, quote-unquote, the New York Post wrote on April 27. Minority employees had to endure bigoted remarks such as, it's hard to manage black people, and who would be worth more, black slaves from times past or new slaves, according to a complaint by former workers Celeste Henley and Ernest Colbert Jr., filed in Atlanta federal court. Colbert Jr. also claims he was paid thousands less than white colleagues as a manager at the affiliated Turner Broadcasting System. Henley, a former CNN executive assistant, says she was fired in 2014 for complaining that black employees were being paid less than white counterparts. This is CNN. Writes Hollywood Reporter, quote, unlike the lawsuit against Fox News, the one against CNN and sister companies is much broader, claiming, among other things, that African Americans receive lower performance ratings and evaluations, that there are dramatic differences in pay between similarly situated employees of different races, and that the promotion of African American employees is blocked by a glass ceiling, quote-unquote. For instance, why isn't Wolf Blitzer replaced by an African American, or Jake Tapper? Henceforth, Jake Tapper's name is going to be Fake Tapper. The complaint cites hiring and advancement statistics while alleging that African American employees at CNN have endured slurs from superiors, including, it's hard to manage black... I already read those. While the Fox News suit has grown by one additional employee, the case against CNN may soon become bigger by many multiples. That's because after the defendants move for dismissal, or at least a more definitive statement, this is CNN moving for dismissal, about specific allegations, also raising the prospect that some of the claims may be barred by statute of limitations or by plaintiffs not exhausting administrative remedies, the plaintiffs' attorneys told the judge of their wish to file an amended complaint. There goes the static again. According to a plaintiff's motion to amend that was filed March 23, quote, since the filing of this action, counsels for the plaintiffs have been contacted by more than 175 people, both former and current employees of the defendant, CNN, requesting to be members of the putative class action, all having similar complaints of intentional racial discrimination, discrimination impact, and discriminatory practices employed by the defendants. That is CNN and Company. The attorneys also write that many of the potential members recently coming forward are within the administrative process at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and awaiting their 90 days right to sue letter. So the number of people now suing CNN is 10 times higher than those suing Fox, writes Ken LaCourte on Mediaite. Yet how many stories have you read about that? CNN star Jake Tapper, a.k.a. Fake Tapper, has clearly forgotten about the lawsuit against his own network. Here's what he posted on Twitter on April 26. When a company sends the clear signal that women are basically subhuman, vile behavior thrives even after top offenders are fired. But hey, If it's not on CNN, it must be news, right, ladies and gentlemen? There you are, CNN. Scores and scores of people accusing CNN of racial discrimination, vile racial discrimination. And it just shocks me that the reporters over at Fox aren't contacting CNN's advertisers to see if they want to continue spending money on advertisements on a cable channel that's filled with individuals who are accused of racial discrimination against African Americans. How about that? Syria using crematorium to hide execution, State Department says, and they've showed photos of this too. The Syrian government has constructed and is using a crematorium inside its notorious Sednaya military prison outside Damascus to clandestinely dispose of thousands of prisoners it continues to execute inside the facility, according to the State Department. At least 50 prisoners a day are executed in the prison, some in mass hangings, said Stuart Jones, the acting Assistant Secretary of State for the Middle East. A recent Amnesty International report called Sednaya a human slaughterhouse and said that thousands of Syrians have been abducted, detained, and exterminated there. The government of President Bashar al-Assad, Jones said, has carried out these atrocities and others seemingly with the unconditional support from Russia and Iran as main backers. The information, he said, came from human rights and non-governmental sources, as well as intelligence assessments. He released overhead photographs of the facility. Russia, Jones said, has either aided in or passively looked away at the regime as the regime has engaged in years of mass murders and other atrocities, including extensive bombing of hospitals and other healthcare sites and the use of chemical weapons on both civilians and rebel forces. During last week's meeting in Washington with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Jones said Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that Russia must now, with great urgency, exercise its influence over the Syrian government. Well, I'm sure that was immediately responded to in a positive way. Jones's remarks made in a special State Department briefing were notable not only for their substance, but for the harsh language used to call on Russia to take action. So, Syria now has a crematorium. A crematorium. Where the evidence of their genocide is being covered up. You know, memories of the Third Reich, memories of horrific regimes, and of course Russia's backing it. I wonder how these Code Pink Republicans think today about that. Oh, stay out of it, Mark. I'm not in it. This is your boy Putin and the Islamo-Nazi regime in Tehran. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, Israel's going to give away the Judea and Samaria, give away most of Jerusalem, 98.7% of Jerusalem. The Palestinians will be happy. Hamas will disarm. The PLO will disarm. Everything will go swell. It'll just be great. It'll be great. Let's take some calls. Joe, Charlotte, North Carolina, the great WSPC. Go.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for taking my call, Mark. Wanted to mention a couple of things. Number one, I bought all of your books, multiple copies of a lot of them.
Very kind.
I have listened to every single broadcast since you have been syndicated.
Wow, well, thank you.
Except when a couple of times when some of your guests were on there. But anyway,
okay.
And also I'm a subscriber to your TV show. I'm one.
How do you like it?
Original ones.
Do you like it?
What I'd like to say is I am
all right.
Very disappointed that Trump has not gone ahead and made Jerusalem or made our embassy, taking it to Jerusalem.
Right.
But I'm not really surprised. I voted for Trump, but when you don't get someone who has a conservative philosophy, you just can't depend on what they say. They're
much more susceptible to this swamp they keep talking about. They're much more susceptible to being dragged in. I don't care if you're an outsider or not. If you don't have steadfast principles and you're going to stand up against anybody based on those principles, but your mindset is more on cutting deals, well, that's the sort of thing that happens. Now, I mean, I think he's done a number of good things, but I think what we're seeing here with Israel and climate change and infrastructure spending, which is going to be next, and this disastrous budget bill that he cheered, and now Ivanka's pushing this family leave. I mean, these are all left-wing things. And
plus the fact that he pushed this Rhino Care bill, which, was a terrible bill, and the only thing it seems like he's interested in is winning some kind of argument. And
but in this case, in Israel, he could not have been cleared. Right, Joe? He could not have been clear. He could not have been more specific.
That's exactly right. I agree with you 100%.
What did I miss during the course of the campaign? Did we miss something?
Well, I think we missed the fact that he's always been a liberal and a Democrat up till this.
No. I mean on the Israel issue. Did we miss some? Did we miss here?
No, we didn't miss what he said, but I didn't believe what he said anyway.
All right, my friend. Thank you for your call. Brian, Toledo, Ohio, Sirius Satellite, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm all right. Go, buddy.
I misspoke to the call screen earlier. I said WJR Detroit, but an hour earlier it's WABJ Adrian that I'm actually listening to tonight.
All right.
Anyway, I mentioned that nobody seemed to worry about Hillary Clinton's server and being hacked by anybody, any evil people in the world, whereas now tonight they say, oh, Donald Trump, revealed classified information to the Russians, and it's like, wow, what a bunch of hypocrites the news media are.
It's amazing, isn't it? And I'll tell you what, there's no evidence on Trump. There's anonymous source or sources, and in fact, quite the contrary. There's 3 other individuals who were in that meeting, top-flight senior individuals in his administration, who said, no, that didn't happen, and nothing classified was revealed. In Hillary Clinton's case, we have evidence, overwhelming evidence, of serial violations of the Espionage Act.
Right.
And so you're right. The media is so incredibly hypocritical, and yet they're not even the same situation.
Right. Yeah. And I have almost all your books, and I really think you're great. That's what I want.
Well, you're very kind, but I want to tell you and all my wonderful listeners who I'm blessed to have, you're going to love Rediscovering Americanism. I know you're going to really like it. I think it's my best book. And I'll tell you something that's amazing, Brian. I looked this morning on Amazon because somebody sent me an email and said, look at Amazon. It's 40% off, even before it's out. It's pre-ordered 40% off. Now, I don't know if it'll go higher or lower or what. That is a huge discount for a book that's not out. And we moved up the date from July 4th to June 27th because we were told there's a great deal of demand for the book from bookstores and from individuals. So we said, okay, what's the earliest we can move it up? For our printing, we got to print these books. It was June 27th, so we're putting it out on June 27th. And if I had a copy, I'd give it to you, but I hope you'll get one.
I'll buy it for my birthday. It's June 24th, so I'll buy it for the
June 24th.
Yeah.
All right. Well, God bless you, man. If I had one, I'd give it to you. Thank you. But truthfully, people, you're gonna love this book. I know you are. We've talked a little bit about it, but it explains all these events going on today. It puts them in context. All these brush fires that are so damn frustrating and stressful. If you love your country, you're watching this stuff, you're shaking your head and going, "What the hell's going on here?" Well, you'll know exactly what the hell's going on here. I don't mean in the specific instance, but it all makes sense. Let's continue. Tim, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Sirius Satellite. Go.
Hi, Mark. 12-year listener, third-time caller.
Thank you, Tim.
So I've been suffering here in Minnesota. We've got Franken as our senator.
No. Minnesota.
Okay. Franken as our senator, and Ellison is my representative.
Oh, man.
All I have is you and Trump.
Well, thank you. Can't get worse than Ellison and Franken. Good Lord, I can't even imagine.
It's horrible.
Yes.
So I just think that this whole Israel issue with the embassy is crazy because it's between us, the United States, and Israel. It's no one else's business where we have our embassy.
Let me ask you, did they consult with Israel when they decided to put an embassy in the capital of Jordan?
Of course not.
Did they consult with Israel on where to put an embassy anywhere else in the Middle East?
No. It's a rollover move as far as I'm concerned.
It really is a complete sellout. I don't get it.
I voted for Trump, and I expect him to stand behind his word. And this is a letdown. I'm not going to stop supporting him, but this is very unsettling.
All right, Tim. God bless you, my friend. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I want to thank Brett Baer and Brian McKelvey for doing an excellent segment on Convention of States. Just honest, straight-up reporting. Took no positions. Just did a story on a story. And the story is we're now 12 states that believe in a Convention of States and that have passed resolutions. That's more than a third of the states necessary, 34 state legislatures. And you just got to keep at it. You got to keep at it, and you got to keep at it. We have millions of grassroots people, and that's led by Meckler and Farris and Coburn and their efforts. I'm just, I'm the air cover. And this is something that I think you should feel very positive about. You should get very energetic about. You should get behind. And all you have to do is Google it and see your local chapter and participate in it in those states, particularly those red states, where it's not moving and you have a few knuckleheads who are blocking it. Robert, Boise, Idaho, Sirius Satellite, a trucker friend. Go right ahead, sir.
Hi, Mark. I won't take up too much of your time. I just wanted to tell you, 55-year-old truck driver. I'm a veteran. I am a former liberal. I had, and only, in my defense, only because I had no idea what was going on. Yeah. And I started listening to you. And the first couple times I heard you yelling at people, and I turned you off. But I got to tell you, I've learned so much from you about politics and about our country and liberty. And you're the best teacher. I've learned so much in a couple of years I've been listening to you. I just bought 4 more of your books. When I pre-ordered your new one, I've already had Liberty and Tyranny and Plunder and DC.
Let me ask you a question. First of all, I want to thank you for your wonderful call. I really appreciate it. Let me ask you a question. I only have a minute. So you hear me yelling at some people, and they no doubt deserved it, and yet you came back. What is it that drew you back to the show?
Well, I heard, your podcast. I heard on Sean Hannity, I saw something that you wrote, several things that you wrote out of, I think it was Plunder and Deceit, or Liberty and Tyranny. No, because all right. I was listening to you when you released Plunder and Deceit. And I said, wow, I gotta look this guy up. So I got your podcast. I didn't have Sirius Radio at the time. Right. And I downloaded your podcast every day and listened to it. And,
well, I want to thank you, Robert. We now have 6.6 million listening events on our podcast. And people that, in addition to radio. Thank you, my brother. We'll be back.
One-man antidote for liberal media bias. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
98% of the people who post on my social sites are intelligent, nice, respectful people. Don't always agree. But then we get people like Kit Rowley. You're beginning to sound like a frothing at the mouth Democrat or rhino. What the you-know-what Are you the blank president of the United States? Give him a chance to do it. It's so bizarre. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. So we shouldn't participate in any of this unless we're cheerleaders. I happen to think I'm the most intellectually honest broadcaster on TV or radio. Now, obviously other broadcasters will think they are, but I honestly believe I am. I apply my conservative principles and my experience to events that are taking place. It's not a matter of me thinking I'm president. How stupid is that? Raleigh, if that is your name. Not a frothing at the mouth Democrat. How stupid is that? But, I am, in fact, going to continue to analyze what's taking place out there. Now, the great thing about radio is you don't have to listen. You don't. And I'm well aware of this. But on the other hand, you can't please everybody, and that's not my goal. My goal is people will agree with me, they'll disagree with me, but at least they'll know it was a thoughtful thing. Unless, of course, it's some imbecile who calls up, and I have no patience for imbeciles. When you order your Simply Safe Home security system, you order it online, you're taking the first step to protecting your family and your home. With entry sensors and motion sensors and glass break sensors, soon you'll make your home a burglar's worst nightmare, and you'll be done in under an hour. Simply Safe comes pre-programmed to work out of the box. You just plug in the base station, and it'll talk you through the entire process. It's that simple. Even someone who isn't the slightest bit handy can install it. The entire system is wireless, so there's no need to drill holes in your walls or do other permanent damage. And once you're all set up with this cutting-edge technology, and that's what it is, Simply Safe makes it just as easy to stay protected month to month. There are no long-term contracts, no hidden fees. And it's just $14.99 a month for 24/7 professional monitoring and emergency dispatch service. Don't wait another day to take your home safety into your own hands. Get Simply Safe. Go to simplysafemark.com and get 10% off your home security system. That's simplysafemark.com, simplysafemark.com. Mike on Long Island, the great WABC. Go.
Hey, Mark. Thank you for everything you do. For 20
you don't mean like everything I do, because after the show I'm going to get a steak sandwich.
Oh, okay. 20 to 30 years of negotiations with Israel and the Arabs. Mm-hmm. And it always ends with the Arabs saying they won't accept the existence of Israel. I can't for the life of me understand, if we know that that's the case, why isn't that the first condition of negotiation? And if they're not going to accept the existence of Israel, no two-state solution, and stop the negotiations.
I'm with you. I think this whole thing is a farce. And I think if Israel ever capitulates under all this pressure, over time Israel will cease to exist. That's a grave call, a great concern I have, and most of us do. It's common sense. All right, Mike, thanks for your call, my friend. Isaac, Los Angeles, California, on the Mark Levin app. Go.
Hi. My big concern is if it does not move the embassy over soon, it will be like Obama drawing a red line against Syria on the chemical weapons and doing nothing.
That's a very interesting analogy.
Right. President Trump gained a lot when he sent those missiles into Syria, and he will lose all that he has gained. He should, while he's in Jerusalem, on the 50th anniversary, declare unequivocally our embassy is going to be in Jerusalem, of course, in the western part of Jerusalem, not the Arab East part. And there should be no question about that in order to maintain his integrity so he doesn't have to recapture what he's already gained. Why throw it away? I don't understand that mentality.
Well, something's going on, and it's very troubling, and we will continue to analyze this. I'm going over to Israel for the first time in my life next week. It's the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem, and I'm going to be able to watch this with both of my eyes up close and personal. And so that'll be next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday and Friday I will not be on the air, but we will have a wonderful guest hosts, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we will have some spectacular guests, too, so I hope you'll all be listening. Thank you for your call, my friend. Thank you, thank you. How about Kimberly in Scottsdale, Arizona, Sirius Satellite? Hello, Kimberly.
Hello. I just have to say that it's just so frustrating why we are always permitting, sometimes inviting, other countries, governments, entities to tell us what to do. If it's not input from the UN about elections or the Internet, now our embassy, I mean, so many countries in this world have benefited from our benevolence. They should be providing gratitude, not advice, and it's really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. All right, Kimberly. Thank you for your call. Len, Los Angeles, California, Sirius Satellite, go.
Hi, Mark. I have a question that's perplexed me for many years.
Yes, sir.
Why do the Republicans fear Democrats so much? To me, Democrats are nothing but a bunch of nerds and pussycats, and the Republicans treat them like, are the Republicans castrated? What's wrong with them?
Well, you're very graphic in your description of both parties, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, that's how I see it. I mean, these Democrats, Mark, I'll be honest with you, in high school we used to beat the crap out of these kind of pussycats.
Well, now they beat the crap out of us, apparently. If you look at, what went on in Oakland or wherever the hell that was. Oh, there. Berkeley, that's right.
So what is the Republican problem? Why can't they stand up to these people?
I don't think they want to stand up to these people. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, so then the Republicans are cowards. That's the bottom line to me.
Well, sir, if they're castrated, as you said they are, well, they do have an issue there. All right, my friend, I appreciate your call. I agree with you, too. Yes, I do. I agree with him. Charlotte, Chicago. How are you, Charlotte?
Fine, thank you. Mark, shouldn't we have quite a bit of leverage over the Palestinians? We send them hundreds of millions of dollars, American taxpayer money, and a lot of it is unfortunately used to reward Palestinian families when their sons kill Americans or kill Israelis.
And Hamas is busy building tunnels, reinforced with steel and cement, and we all know this stuff's going on, and yet we still play this game to give them money for humanitarian purposes, which often they use for military purposes and terrorist purposes, and then we talk about a two-state solution. Let me ask you something. If you lived in Israel, would you even want anything close to a two-state solution?
No.
Be crazy.
Mark, have you heard of the Taylor Force Act? In February, Republicans were talking about cutting off all financial aid to the Palestinians until they, they were held accountable for what they're doing, these atrocities they're committing with American tax money. So what happened to that?
Nothing. You're right. It sits there and languishes with everything else as we chase down the collusion between Trump and Vladimir Putin to win the election, and we all know that's what cost Hillary the election. All right, my friend, I appreciate your call. Yes, it's depressing. Bill, Tallahassee, Florida, the great WFLA-FM. Go.
Hey, Mark, how you doing, my man?
Very well, thank you, sir.
All right, well, I just wanted to preface by saying I'm a 22-year-old college student in Tallahassee, go to Florida State University.
Oh, good for you. Yep.
Yeah. Well, before I started listening to your show, I was a big fan of your friend Ben Shapiro.
Well, I'm a big fan of his still.
Yeah, I've been listening to him for a while now, and basically, I just want to thank you for what you've been talking about recently with this whole Comey thing that's been going on. I mean, it's just outrageous. What Ben was saying was he basically pointed out that Trump fired him just because he really didn't just like the guy, and that's what it boils down to. And this whole thing, I think, is blown over. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to find out that there really is nothing there.
But look at the damage they're doing. They know, they don't care if there's anything there or not. The left, they're burning everything in sight down. That's what they're doing. Burn this and burn that, and of course the newspapers are doing the same thing.
And that goes to my other point, where now we see with journalists, they do this thing where they hold on to these, not even facts, they're just, anonymous sources that could be leaking, could be false information, and they play gotcha journalism where they...
And you notice they don't even slow down. Last week I pointed out numerous instances where they were absolutely wrong with anonymous sources, and they don't care. And they just keep plowing ahead. All right, my friend, you sound like you're very, very bright over there in Tallahassee. I appreciate your call. I thought it was from Tampa Bay for a minute. Tampa Bay, where the great Bruce Allen used to work. Now he works at the Washington Redskins. And by the way, they've had a hell of a draft, and they have done some really smart off-season stuff. And so have some other teams, by the way, in that division. The Eagles. Dallas has pretty much sat still. Giants improved somewhat. What do you tell me? The Cowboys did stand. Well, what did they do, Mr. Producer? Open your microphone. He's a Cowboys guy. What did the Cowboys do?
Oh, and they only drafted, 7 defensive ends in the draft.
I know, but you only need 1. So thank you. 2. And there you go. And of course, regular Mr. Producer is a big Steelers fan. Isn't that correct, Brian? Yes. So I'm surrounded here. All right, we'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Chicago. Love Chicago. All right. Here are 5 reasons why Blindster.com, that's blindster.com, is the only window treatment company I support. Their customer service is the best in the industry. The Blindster exclusive fit or free guarantee means if for any reason your blinds don't fit, even if you measured incorrectly, Blindster will make the new size needed for free. You only pay shipping. Number 2, owner Kyle Cox is the type of entrepreneur who makes America truly great. He cares deeply about his customers. That would be you. And will treat you like family. I know this to be the case because I've gotten to know this man. He's quite good. Number 3, Blindster.com has a huge selection of blinds, shades, shutters, and more. Number 4, only Levin customers. Listen, only Levin customers get a whopping 40% off their already low prices. Just enter promo code MARK at checkout. Promo code MARK at checkout. And number 5, I'm a satisfied Blindster.com customer, so I know that you will be too. If you can use a tape measure and turn a screwdriver, you can install custom-made window treatments for a bargain. That's Blindster.com. Enter promo code MARK. You do it at checkout, you'll get 40% off their already low prices. This is a big deal. That's blindster.com, blindster.com. Use promo code MARK at checkout. Get 40% off. Gail, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Quickly, go.
Oh, I didn't hear what you said. Go ahead. Say again.
You're on. Go.
Hey, I was just kind of comment on, I'm not sure I'm commenting on actually, but I want to call and tell you that I appreciate your show and was going to talk about either Dallas Cowboys or a two-state solution for Israel.
Well, let's do the latter.
Let's do the latter, two-state solution.
Maybe I'll do a sports show one of these days. I tried it a couple of months ago and I was lousy. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, I'll keep it short. I'm 30 years military. I was enlisted. I made lieutenant commander before I left the Navy.
Wow, that's a big deal too. Good for you.
Excuse me?
That's a big deal. Good for you.
It was a big deal. And in those travels, I got to go to different places around the world. And one of the places I got to go to was Israel. And I'm not too sure what kind of point I'm going to make here, except the fact that I do believe, based on my experiences and my places I went to in Israel and Jerusalem, that there has to be a two-state solution.
All right, let me slow you down. Let me slow you down. Commander, let me slow you down a second. You were in Israel, right?
My ship was docked.
You were in Israel, correct? Is that what you said?
Yes, I was in Haifa.
Well, why didn't you go into the Palestinian areas?
Well, because at the time, we couldn't go into Jericho because of the Palestinians, okay?
Well, why? Why? What's wrong with the Palestinians in Jericho?
Well, they wouldn't let us in at the time. Now, I was in the military. I was on a ship.
Okay, but you're not in the military anymore. If you went over to the Middle East, would you go to Jericho where the Palestinians are?
I'm sorry, say again?
I said you're not in the military now, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so how come you don't go on vacation in Jericho?
Because I've been there, done that.
No. You said you couldn't go into Jericho, right?
At the time, they would not let us in there, and this is in the millennium.
Commander, I'm asking you a question. You know why you're not answering me?
No.
Commander, you would go to Israel, and you could vacation in Israel. I asked you why you wouldn't today go into Jericho and vacation there.
Oh, I would if they let us in. If they do, I'd be fine.
Well, who would let you in?
Well, whoever.
Who's stopping you?
Okay, I'm not sure I'm following you on this.
No, who is stopping you from going to Jericho?
I'm sorry?
We're not. I don't know what the problem is here. Who is stopping you from going to Jericho today?
Well, nobody today that I know of.
So go.
I'm just telling you what happened.
The answer is, I'll give you the answer, okay? The answer is this. You'd be taking your life into your own hands, wouldn't you, Commander?
Of course I would.
Okay. And yet you talk about a two-state solution.
First thing they said when we got off the phone.
Hold on now. And yet you talk about a two-state solution. Maybe the Israelis don't want to take their lives into their own hands.
I'm guessing that's probably it.
Okay, so how can you have a two-state solution with people who want to cut your throat?
Well,
particularly the leadership. Well, why do you have to have a peace deal? Is there a peace deal? I mean, look, two-state solution, North and South Korea. There's your two-state solution.
You know what? I agree with you, Mark. I really do.
Sometimes you can't have peace. Sometimes you just have a lack of war.
I actually agree with you there. I've been in South Korea as well.
See that, Commander? I knew we'd get along. Just great.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate everything you've done, okay?
All right. God bless you. Take care of yourself. What I was going to ask also, this two-state solution. Okay, we have two states. What exactly does this Palestinian state look like? What kind of government do they have? What kind of military do they have? What kind of police force do they have? Can they ship in arms from, say, North Korea and Iran and so on? Can they have an air force? What can they do? I'm asking you a serious question. These people with the two-state solution. No, we'll have all these limits on them. They can't do this. And how are you going to enforce the limits? Look at the Islamo-Nazis in Tehran. We enforcing limits there? So what is this two-state solution? So honestly, I don't get it. I get it. Everybody wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Everybody wants a legacy. And the hell with the people who live there. I got it. I understand it completely. I'm extremely disappointed in what Donald Trump is about to do or is doing, or at least his administration is doing, with respect to this. All right, we got to a lot today. Make sure you watch Levin TV. It's a great Levin TV. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. Stick with us, folks. I'll be here on the radio tomorrow. God bless you.
Insurance is not knowing if you have coverage when your car bumps a hot dog cart that hits a fire hydrant that floods your car. TD Insurance is confidence your coverage fits your needs. Graduates and professionals could save $845 by bundling home and car insurance. Avoid insurance and get a quote at tdinsurance.com.